All right, are we ready? It's 5:07 on Tuesday, July 6, 2021, and I hereby call this recessed meeting of the City Council to order. Roll call. City Clerk? Here.
Councilmember Finley?
Here.
Councilmember Moran?
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Here.
Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Marr?
Here.
Could I get someone to move to confirm or adjust the agenda?
I move.
Motion made to move by Councilman Finley. Could I get a second?
Second.
Second made by Councilman Mayer. All in favor? Aye. And that's Marr, excuse me. Gerard, that will not happen again. Before,
We only have one mayor.
you're right, we have to remember that. So, before we begin the presentation, tonight's the first meeting of the council for the 2022 session. So we'd like to welcome our two new council members, Mr. Ricky Shepherd over here to my right, representing Ward 3, and Mr. Gerard Marr, Councilman at Large. So welcome. We're excited to start this new four-year term with a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you both.
Thanks, guys.
And now we're going to turn the meeting over to our city manager, Mr. Michael Russo, to discuss our budget.
Yes, ma'am. Per state statute, obviously, one of my responsibilities is to provide a preliminary budget to the council. We've got, kind of a budgeted calendar that has a couple of more recess meetings, depending on how many more workshops the council wants to go. Generally, it's 2 or 3 times, I think, since I've been doing this, to nail it down. I think the final acceptance, we start advertising the budget for public hearing in August, first meeting in August. First of all, I also want to thank Kathy, because she starts working on this in about April, my meeting with the department heads. Also crunching numbers. She came in June and did a kind of an assessment of where we are year to date and what we think we're going to be towards the end of the year, and does an exceptional job and gets us to this point. So definitely grateful for her, because I start now with FY23 budget, my notes, and I just kind of hand that to her and go, here, this is some items we want to try to include, but just want to recognize her and say thank you. From the tax assessor side, we're basically being told that we'll have a slight increase going into this year. They did do a reassessment, so again, we should see a little bit more up on the revenue side generated from our current millage of 29.5. I am recommending that we just leave that where it is. Don't increase, don't decrease for this budget. Last year, the council did take a step to move it down from 34 mills to 29.5. That's about a reduction, just dollar-wise, about $500,000 in our budget. And we're able to make that work. Interest rates are basically 0%. And previously we were at about 2.34 on a fixed rate, so we've had to adjust for that. We will be trying to look at some options to see can we use some of our money that's just sitting in the bank and try to deploy it into different assets, to see if we can try to get maybe just 1%. And that's kind of what we used going in this budget, was a 1% on standing cash. Most expenses that you'll see throughout the budget are basically using a 3-year average. This is something that Kathy has used since she's been here, and it's worked well for us. So again, when you look at most line items, that's nothing, office supplies or things like that. We're just kind of using a 3-year average. Where are we? And plugging it in. We did increase property insurance and health insurance by 10%. That's something we just, again, standard do, because we don't know what that's going to be. And fortunately, we've been okay with that. So again, that's across the board, all departments, as you see, health insurance, things like that. On the salaries, we basically held salaries constant, but did add the second incentive plan or payment, which is $250 for all employees. Again, it's an incentive based on performance, so it's not automatic. So if something went wrong or whatever, or if someone didn't comply, or one of them is breaking equipment, damaging equipment, or showing up tardy, or whatever they're doing. So it is a performance based. So that's where, that equates for somebody making 30,000, it's basically a 1% change, somewhere in that range. Also, when it comes to staffing, for all departments, we're basically keeping the same staffing, no changes for that, except in the building department, we'd be asking to hire a second building inspector halfway through the year to assist. We still have an open spot for the development coordinator, somebody to do planning and zoning. We've done a couple of interviews. The most recent, we tried to get a salary range, and that what she was looking for was a little bit, like twice as high. So we'll keep trying to fill that, and that way we have, for that department, really that one training first, and then try and bring in somebody else on the building.
Can I ask a question
Yes,
about
ma'am.
that? The planning and zoning position that's open, that's on the website?
Yes, ma'am.
For folks to, and this is to assist with getting the agendas together, helping with the planning and zoning meetings.
Correct. That would do
Everything involved
anything
in
from
it.
planning and zoning.
Okay.
That
The-
would take the lead on that.
The other question, back and way up to the beginning on the real property taxes, we reduced it last year and we saw a decrease of 500,000, which wasn't a large amount, reducing down to 29.5 mils. Now it's the 10-year time when the tax assessor goes out and does the appraisals, except not on 65 and older, because those properties are frozen at that point. How much of an increase did you say we had?
Basically said there would be an increase, and I just kind of used the word slight increase.
Okay.
But it could be 3,000 per mil, could be 4,000. So we'll kind of see that hard number when we get it from Jimmy.
All right, so we're waiting on that, on our mill value.
So to get a true, we were, I think, at 1.89 mils, 89,000 per mil, and it kind of climbed up. And again, over the trend has been climbing.
Up.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions just on general? Okay.
Okay, all right. So you don't mind us just stopping as we get to it? And the
No,
other-
I mean, I would rather personally, as we go by department, and kind
Mhm.
of hit it, if there's something that jumps out.
I don't know if we're at that point yet, already in what you've already said about hiring more people for public works possibly.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe we could help, get 2 or 3 more guys out there to help, Stan and them catch up.
We have 2 open spots. In fact, I got a resume today or an application online. And so we're trying to fill those 2 spots.
It's kind of like everybody else. We went somewhere this weekend and saw a sign. We're hiring just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, there's other things that are replacing work for some people, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in the budget, to,
Yeah, but now we have 2 vacancies, which we'd love to fill. But this budget didn't say go to, adding any additional staff, just trying to fill those 2.
yeah.
Again, if that's something the council would want to do, then we just have to look at dollars.
That'd be my suggestion. I mean, we may be short too, but, and those jobs are on leave or just vacant or,
The 2
The 2 you're
are
looking
just
for?
vacant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like just filling those 2 is going to get us where we need to be?
According to what Stanley has told me, is the answer would be yes. I mean, obviously, having additional personnel gives us more options and flexibility, because you can have more hands going in different directions.
I
But
feel we should look for more as well. Don't just get through 2 and be good. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree totally with your opinion. I mean, today was interesting. I'll
Perfect
just leave it
example.
at that. But, and the other thing with the building department, I would, with the 200 homes coming in with Elliott, just inspecting the Memorial Hospital 20,000 square foot building is a lot of inspections, and that's specialty. Where the CT scan goes, the concrete's totally different under that. The specialty pharmacy takes a very trained and skilled person to be the inspector on. I would like to see, instead of half the year, the whole year at another building official, because we are overworked to a point of overworked in that department. And that increases the budget 20,000 for that, right? Because we only budgeted
yeah, we budgeted, I think, 20 for
20
half
and
a
we
year.
want 40, so we need to add an
Yeah.
additional 20. But the 2 for the public works were already budgeted, just not, okay.
I agree with that in full.
Sure.
There was a mention of shortage of backhoe operators and other operators as well. do we need to do to tackle that issue? Because we have serious drainage issues, and if we don't have if our backup, we only have one backhoe operator, and they're
Well,
out with the
you've got
flu
more
for a
than
week.
one, but part of it is CDLs and the types of equipment, and that's part of this, looking at some of the changes in this budget. We've got three pieces of very heavy equipment that we really don't use. I mean, the minimal hours. And so we're making a recommendation if we change that, we sell the heavy stuff, which requires a CDL to move it. So you need a big dump truck, big trailer, big piece of track hoe, and it can't get in the places we need to go. So again, when we get into public works, that's going to be part of the discussion. And that gives us some flexibility on who can operate that equipment. And not everyone can just jump on a machine. But then again, when you start, and Nancy probably knows it better than anybody, but when you start paying heavy equipment operators, they're making 30, 35 an hour.
There was
be out doing
also
it.
talk, Mike, and you and I think I'd mentioned it to Nancy at some point, of contracting out for all our needs such as that. Not doing it ourselves any longer.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's something we need to look at in the future. What are your thoughts?
Are you talking about contracting out public works?
Contracting out as in Mayor Depro, didn't we have a discussion about your ditches every year?
Oh, yeah, the contracting out the ditch maintenance once a year, getting someone in here to clean all the ditches out. Now, that might be yes, we did. So we like that thought because it's so difficult to keep up with the ditches. But if we had somebody come in, and it'd probably take a month to run through everything, maybe a little longer, come in once a year, pay an outside firm to clean all the ditches out, then Public Works will be able to have a better handle on it. Right now, they get one in clean, they got to go back and start over. It's a continuous, because we're all open ditches, we're very little subsurface. It makes for a lot more work,
Yeah, and again, I'll go back with the equipment change. One of those ideas was to be able to have two different crews for ditch digging going in two different directions. But we were definitely backlogged on that. They come in regularly.
And that may help with our drainage issue and down the road, and especially with, it seems to be we have more rising water now than ever. So just a thought, if that's something you want to look into.
Or get an estimate so we know in the budget, hey, this is what it'd be to get a contractor to come in and just go through and clean out the ditches, and then we'll be able to get control of it with Public Works. And I love the idea of having mini excavators instead of smaller ones, because when you get in the big yard, people's yards with the heavy equipment, no good comes out of how it looks when you leave. And I don't care how good you are, but having the mini, small, that you can maneuver and handle better.
You don't need a CDL to
Exactly,
pull
and
it.
they do the work with the extended arms.
Just a small trailer.
Yes.
It also opens the options to get more people to be able to operate that equipment, smaller equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all ready to keep going?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start on revenues. I did print the entire budget as presented which is a lot of pages, 47, I think, with small print. But I'll kind of hit the highlights. And so some big numbers when you start talking about general fund revenue. What we take to operate the city is right at $5 million. That is generated through taxes, which is right at $3 million. So that's broken down by real property taxes at $2.3 million and auto tax at $620,000. Those are your big ticket items that generate the majority of the budget. The next section would bring us into licensing and permits, which is $453,000, so just under $500,000. Franchise fees, so that's what your C Spire, Coast Electric, and all these other corporations pay us to have, kind of lines running through our city, is right under $300,000 at $295,000, and the building permits are at $130,000. The next section would be the intergovernmental income. That's money changing between hands from governmental bodies.
Some of the new ones here, I'm following you.
Interlocal.
Where you
Yeah.
going?
Bottom of page 3.
Okay, category
So I'm on
23.
page 4, intergovernmental revenues, 1,297,000. The main breakup for that, homestead exemption that we get
Yeah.
kind of rebated back to us at 280,000. Sales tax that comes from the state is 792,000. That's another number that continues to trend upward. To be honest, in looking at this year's budget, we wanted to be a little conservative because was last year a phenomenon or not with COVID? Did more people shop locally? And if we look into FY22, are they going to kind of return back to their ways of going to Walmart or going to Slidell or wherever else? Or will they still shop in our local stores? But again, that number historically is trending up, which is a great thing. Again, we're using kind of an average on that, okay? So just FYI, for sales tax diversion, when you buy something in a grocery store, you pay 7% sales tax to the state. The state then turns around and returns 18.5% of every dollar back to the city. Okay? What makes that up. And road and bridge is at 206. So half of that comes directly from Jimmy Ladner's office, the tax collector, and then the other half we have to request from the Board of Supervisors, which we generally do towards the end of the year. So we still have to do that for this year. So that's 103 for each bucket. Fines and forfeitures, again, page 4 at the bottom, is $49,500. Our interest income, like I told you, we're going to try to look for some options to get us away from 0%. And we're trying to see if we can get 1%, and we have that at 42,000.
That's down like 100,000.
It's down a lot.
Yes, it is. That's a hard one to look at.
When we had a fixed rate of 2.34, I think was the hard number that we had locked in for a while, and I believe that was just on a checking account, by the way. It wasn't even a special investment. And then finally, you'll see is just a sale of assets. Again, this is on page 5 at 154,000, and that would be what I kind of referred to a little while ago in our discussion of looking to sell some of this large equipment, this big track hoe. We've used it, I think, 1,000 hours since it was bought, which is about, on average, let's call it less than one day a week, if you kind of average it out, compared to what a track hoe, a small mini can do. And then that would be the dump truck that goes with it. That's huge. That's always breaking. And then the trailer that it's used to go with. And again, a conservative estimate's 150 grand basically.
Mike, the only concern, I guess, by selling that big equipment is as soon as you sell it, what if another Katrina type situation came in, God forbid, and here we are without it.
I mean, it's not something you'd probably end up using for Katrina. I mean, it's not like you're running that down the center of Noma Drive or Diamondhead Drive West.
Just doing the best we can until our help gets here, So I don't know. That's just my only concern. If you think we can live without it, then let's roll.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what that equipment's intended to do. And we're also trying to prearrange those contracts so that
Just about ready to get it. I think
And
by
advertised.
By next agenda, we'll have the advertising ready.
Okay.
So you're saying
gotta
this
approve
equipment
it.
with that will be null and
yeah, they've already approved it.
We did approve it, it just hadn't hit the paper yet. We made a motion to advertise. So once those get in place, they'll be waiting in the wings. And
Okay.
once the storm leaves, they should be here within hours.
If
The
that's the
initial
case-
push will be in that contract.
If that's the case and that equipment is completely unnecessary, then
Yeah.
go ahead. I was just thinking cautionary.
No, I hear you.
Okay.
So that's kind of the income side of our budget. You think we've got basically a $5 million general fund, and I said this to Kathy after we've had several meetings on this, and I was like, there's not a lot of fluff when you go through it. It's amazing when you look at $5 million on a city budget. And as we kind of go through department by department, I think you'll see it. The first department is the legislature. That's our city council, and that's these meetings. We did increase the travel budget by $4,000 just to have a general travel, just to add some funds in case we want to go to Jackson more or DC. As we're working with Pickering to try to solidify some funds for us, there'll be some of that available. What's that?
It's page 7.
I have not. I just want to make sure I'm on the. The travel budget for legislature is on page 7. Right above that is 10,000 that we've put in for redistricting. That is something because of the census. Jeannie can probably talk to it better or smarter than I can, but she told me to put $10,000 there. So we did. It may be less, maybe more.
That seems a little small, but we'll see. So we've got to wait till after the state, then the county, and then we're last.
And-
So our ward lines may move.
And GRPC is doing it for, I forget what, was it Hancock County or one of them, I forget which group. And I asked him, I was like, hey, Paul, I said, what kind of money are y'all charging? And I talked to him, he goes, Mike, he goes, for Diamondhead, you're probably anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
And he goes, maybe, 8,500, you'd be safe. So Jeannie said 10, so I was like, let's keep it there. It gives us a conservative estimate. In this budget, I know Mayor Nancy has talked about donating part of her salary. This one just has it all lump sum based on what our ordinance says for payment. So again, that'll be some direction coming, and we can allocate as needed. And that's basically your department in a nutshell. Nothing really has changed other than that. And it's $69,000 for legislature. Any questions on that? And then I'll move into the court department, which is on page kind of 8, where this prints. And this will be a quick one. There's been no major changes to the court department. Everything is basically running on averages. And that cost $198,000 to run that department. So I got nothing to highlight there.
$198,000 to run the court department.
Mhm.
Derek, what are you doing?
198.
I'm
Get him for
just
peanuts.
wondering. Hey, no, that's been consistent. That hasn't really gone up or down over the last 3 years or so. So I know one of the questions that you all will probably instinctively look at is when you look at the, fines and forfeitures, which is, a lot of that's court department money, it's about $49,500. So one question that's commonly asked in a lot of municipalities is, is the court department quote unquote paying for itself? Well, you're seeing right now across the country, and Mississippi's no different. I think Mississippi's probably a little bit better than average, but payments of fines are way down across the country. Folks are just not paying their fines. They're not appearing in court. They're not showing up. We're limited. You can't throw people in jail just for not paying fines. You guys may have heard and be familiar with the city of Biloxi had to actually enter into a consent decree and get a public defender and stop some of their practices that they had. You can hold people in contempt for failing to appear in court, but when we do that, we also understand that we're using our police, we're using the contract that we have with the county. We have to pay to house those folks. And so so you have this situation where folks owe the city $200, $300, $400, $500. They don't appear, they don't come, they're in contempt, and then we're paying to put them in jail to come to court to not pay. So, the court department is not a money-making, operation. There are things that we are doing. The state legislature has passed some laws that have gone into effect where we can put holds on refunds, tax refunds, and things like that. We are, we're submitting those to the state, and we're just going to keep being as aggressive as we can. So,
Can we up the community service options? Because we've got a lot of things that need to be done.
we can, we've run, and, you know, I wish Miss Lisa were here because she runs our community, so may, you know, at another meeting, you may want to talk to her, but, it's, with COVID, it was a problem, and it really kind of, it had to stop during COVID. But you're running into some of the same issues, is that we're spending more time and money trying to track folks down to make them do community service than it's worth. So we're not unique in this. A lot of cities are struggling with this right now. There's a lot, you know, Mayor, you've been in our court, and, you know, it's the norm for more folks not to show up than to show up. And we're spending resources every week that we're in court just to get people to show up. So, but, you know, our court department, you know, they're very professional. They run you know, Miss Lisa and Miss Lauren run a very tight ship, and they're on it as much as they can possibly be on it, so.
I
But
was
they're-
just thinking if it was a cost issue with a few of them, we can up the options on community service because there's plenty to do.
There absolutely is, and it's something now, especially with COVID kind of hopefully on the run, it's something that we can start to reinstitute again, because there are things. I mean, we've got folks that help out, you know, public works, animal shelter, you know, and we give that option to folks. You know, we're trying to get creative with folks that simply cannot pay, and there are a lot of those folks out there. So, but I just wanted to give you all that little update.
Moving on to administration, again, that's going to be on page 11. We finalized our third year with Nikes as our auditor, so we will have to be advertising for services. We put that at $36,000, just as, again, we don't know what we're going to get in. Ty had given us, I mean, a very good price, in my opinion, because since I've been here, we used Wright, Ward, Hatton, and Guild, and it was about $36,000. And we used, who was the other one? AVL, and it was about $36,000. And then Ty came in, and it was about $7,000 less on a 3-year contract. But again, we'll go back out for bid and put that in front of you, but that's that number. So that is a change from what we have had. We do have some repairs on the first floor with moisture coming through the building, so we've put $5,000 in there. If we can do that sooner, then we've taken action this year. We probably will. But basically, you can see some bubbling coming off the walls and the paint. So basically, you need a professional in here to kind of scrape it off and put some type of, I'm not educated on it, but some type of sealant, let's call it.
Is this in the policeman's?
It's all on the first floor in a couple of different places. Not in the new police side this way, but that side. And then the office, the storage room, kind of the EOC room, let's call
Oh, I
it.
remember that. I remember that at Katrina, that area.
So again, that's kind of a change, just something we've added in. Okay. I do have some consulting services, obviously, in there with Orion Planning. We have an agreement with them for general consulting services. So as needed to see if we have a building or we're designing a road or a sidewalk, and we want to just ask them, hey, review this. Can you give us some feedback? It's kind of an open-ended, build on an hourly as needed basis. So we have that in there. I put just PR firm. One of the things I would like to try to do is improve communication with our residents. So looking at the idea of a quarterly newsletter, trying to find a way to just be able to, I guess I'm going to call it spread the good news, things that we're doing, and looking at maybe having somebody assist us with that. Right now, we really have the Chamber of Commerce we pay $1,000 a month to, and they handle our Facebook and do press releases as needed, which isn't as much. But really trying to look to see is there something we can do to be able to communicate better with residents so they know what's going on, especially as we get into a lot of drainage projects.
Can I just stop you? You were talking
sir.
a little bit about talking with the POA about getting some pages in the Diamondhead News. Has that gone anywhere?
It wasn't received very well, and I'm not nothing negative. It was a lot of it was maybe the timing. They got to put theirs in like 30 days ahead to get it out. The Sun Herald really, I think, runs that for them. They do all the advertising stuff that realtors and stuff will pay for. And then I think there's a Karen Flores, I think that maybe is the editor, let's call.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's off the shelf 100%, but it is a conversation I'm trying to see is could we get 2 full pages that we could put city stuff in, and we'll pay them for that. You know, would that be a more efficient way for the community to still be able to get the information out?
Gotcha.
Okay? But if not, some type of other mailing piece to residents.
I agree. Communication is lacking in terms of what people know, because they're not online. Maybe 10%, maybe 15.
Yeah. I mean, one of the thoughts I even thought about was a Diamondhead advertiser. I don't know about y'all, but I read it. Don't know the price on what a page costed it, but just looking at all options for us to be able to communicate in written form to every mailbox.
It'd be good to get some factual news out there.
We did have a fabulous flyer that went out at one point, which I won't discuss too much openly, but it was a very good flyer. It just probably should have went out in a different method, but it had everything that we were working on, and it was a beautiful flyer, had it been followed through correctly. So we might want to look back at the format and something along that line.
Yes, ma'am. Keep moving on. I'm just going to, city attorney is $90,000. And again, that's kind of using our average of how he bills us. And I will say the hourly rate that we pay is drastically different than if we look at some of these other cities. And I'm glad we have it that way. I just want to make sure y'all are aware that there is a difference when you start looking at Butler Snow and some of these other firms on what they're charging. So we are happy with that number.
And in my proposal that I have to the city, the rate is the same. I don't charge for mileage or for travel or for travel time. And the rate's been the same since Sean's initial contract back in 13 or 14, $125 an hour. So if y'all have any questions about that.
If I keep moving, just again, travel, we added just $4,000 to have just general, if needed, for trips again to Jackson or DC. Next one I had a printing, going back to that newsletter concept, we added in $6,800 for that number. Under promotions, which is going to be so it'll be page 16, is what I'm being told. Yep, at the bottom of 16. So you can kind of see a list of the things that we contribute to. We call them promotions. Adding in an annual dog park day, that was something that I don't know if we had it in here or not, but we would like to add in. That went over very well, I think, very well received by residents.
And it was also a lot of donations. That's why we got through with 300.
Yeah.
We donated I want to say it was 500, not 300, Jeannie, wasn't it? The budget for the dog park day, 5 instead of 3.
I think it was 500.
It was, but we had a lot of donations. We donated a lot of stuff. Councilman Clark has concluded that he is in on that next time, so. Okay,
the
we
other
might
part,
could even slim the
again,
budget
after
more.
Sunday, if I know many of you participated in the Mississippi Deep Sea Fishing Rodeo when we had the young ladies at the country club. I mean, personally, I thought it was an amazing public relations event. They got a picture on the back of the country club with the view in the back, and just had a very nice thing that can become an annual event. So picking up basically their breakfast and then giving them a little goodie bag. And again, I thought it was a very nice, well-received thing that is shot all over this community, up and down the coast. The other piece we've added in, obviously, January 2022 will be 10-year anniversary of being a city. So we plugged in 3,500 out of thin air, just said, hey, just to do something as a community. Not sure what that is or how y'all want to do it. The council may want to take the lead on that. But having some type of community event, and again, we put 3,500. If y'all think that's sufficient, too much, too little, I'll get direction. We were thinking black tie affair, but no, I'm just kidding.
No, I think that's sufficient. I would love to see, a timeline of the city's historical events, starting at the beginning, all the way to where we are now. Part of what I spoke about for the inauguration or the swearing-in ceremony was, we're a moment in time, all of us sitting here, but there were people that were before us that set the tone for where we are. And our decisions are gonna mark where the people behind us are. So to have a timeline starting with the first thing with the city, you know, maybe on one 8.5 by 11 page that we can hand out to let people know, you know, here's our history, here's where we are, and here's where we're going.
I'm thinking steering committee.
I already have 5 of those going, but what's the 6th?
No, I think it's a great opportunity for the community to really celebrate 10 years. We put some funds in there so that there'd be, you know, so obviously dollars to be able to make something happen. Again, I'll look for direction from y'all if that, think that's sufficient, too much, too little. You know, that was just a number we kind of pulled out and plugged in. The final major item you'd see under capital outlay, and I'm looking to see, where would that be? On what page? Page 19? Is just the capital outlay for renovations. Obviously, we have Eli Hart Guild that have done the design work for this other wing of the building. We plugged in 500,000. They told us an estimate 400,000 when we kind of got into this, and so did Machado Patano. They kind of gave us the same. Hey, we think this is probably based on what we're seeing around 400 grand. We do know the cost of materials has obviously increased. There was some news this weekend that is kind of coming down a lot. I know we have more of an expert on the end that can speak to that better than me. But I think that we've got to be conscious of that cost of materials before we say, hey, you know, before I make a recommendation, let's go advertise for this. So just know that we just kind of plug in that just to be conservative and say we don't want to be under, but hopefully it won't be anywhere near there.
Can I ask, is there a pressing need, like would building and planning and permits be at a loss if this wasn't taken care of in this year and pushed back for another year? It seems to me that we need to focus that money more towards drainage than, you know, redoing this at this point in time. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I'm just saying with the cost of materials high this year, with our drainage really starting to show, you know, problems in various places, it's great that we're getting $4 million to work on it, but $4,500,000 would be even better.
I fully understand that, and again, we've got right now 4.5 million that'll go into the drainage projects over the next, basically deployed over 24 months, as the 2 installments come in from the feds. But again, it's all up to the council. But that's the number we plugged in for this. Again, if the council decides otherwise and reallocates that, that's obviously up to your discretion. When it comes to their location, especially when we go to add just the development coordinator person, I'm already looking, okay, I don't have any more room in that area. So I've already kind of looking at there, taking code enforcement out and sticking them down the hall, probably in the finance office where I have some square footage, you know, which is really hinders that because having them all together works well when there's a need to communicate. And then if we go and you know, want to hire a building inspector, I've got another person to find a seat for. So it's just a matter of being cramped. But I even looked at the idea of, switching offices, moving the finance office and moving the conference room to other locations. It's on the table. Yes, ma'am.
There's really nothing conducive with the layout of the building department. It's very undevelopmental friendly. You try to come in to get a permit, there's 3 people in one office that's hearing your business, and that's just how it is. You know, then the building department inspector is in the other office, and his whole room is just filled with plans because he has no layout area, no place to store the plans. They're not tagged, and he's on demand constantly with inspections. But 3 people in one office, we need to add 2 more, that's 5. You can't walk in there right now with the 3 people in there. It's not conducive to the developers, nor is it conducive to the residents that are trying to come in to pull permits. We should have a counter, you know, and not saying that we can't do something in the area that's open, you know, put a counter up where residents can come up, but something needs to be done, and I'd like to see some money spent in the police department for security upgrades, if we have money. And I'll discuss those options that I thought I'd
Okay, I'm going to be
discuss
moving
with-
into police next.
Oh,
So,
okay.
any other questions on administration? And again, that totals 1.5 million. Under police, again, that budget is right at $1 million. Our interlocal agreement with the Hancock County Sheriff's Department. We're basically estimating a 3% salary increase, just to be conservative. Kind of expecting that that was what they would come out to do. And that's a pass-through to us in maintaining all of the staffing levels. I've had communication with Ricky, Jeremy, and AJ about just how many calls are we going on. You know, that's been back in, I think it was March, I was in Foley and talking to AJ on a Saturday and just, you know, trying to write tickets and if they've got the number of calls. And I think he told me the number of calls had doubled in a short period of time. So we're going from like 700 to 1,400 type of deal. And that's when I asked him, I said, there's got to be a statistic for that number, like how many officers are appropriate. So I think at just some point in the future, we're probably going to see us needing more officers, okay?
And
Because
we're
the
not
calls
gonna
are increasing.
We're not gonna consider that in the interlocal. I thought we were gonna look at that.
I'm sorry?
No. Were we gonna look at that in the interlocal
We haven't on this budget at this time.
to add 2 more officers?
No, we haven't added any officers.
But we're gonna look at it before we move forward. Okay.
And I will say, working with AJ, his comment to me is, we'll make it work. I think
And he
he's
does
sitting
an
back here.
excellent job, but if
Um,
we need
but-
additional, we need them. The calls are,
And that is what is they're being asked and tasked, and the number of calls, and some of the calls, especially if it's a domestic or something else, 2 officers have to respond. They need to have 2 at that call. And so, you know, other things have to get pulled away or delayed. So I just want to make sure, you know, we're watching the numbers. We think, you know,
How often
something
does that
happened.
happen, AJ? Where you have to have to?
it
Quite a
should be
bit.
every call these days.
Would you say probably 3 or 4 times a week? Really? Diamondhead? Hmm. Interesting.
I'm
and
all
even
about,
some of those retirees.
I'm all about looking at when we renew the interlocal to add. We've been talking about it, and it's a priority.
The way the interlocal
We have to
is-
cut something else
Yeah,
out.
the way the interlocal is worded, we wouldn't actually have to change the interlocal agreement. We purposely wrote it with the flexibility that staff can adjust without having to go back through this whole governmental process. So the cost to add the staff is just passed to us,
Okay.
whatever that is. So just realize, I mean, we just need
It'll
to change our
affect the
budget.
budget, because we'll need more cars, and I see you have 2 on here, so we'd need
Yeah.
additional car. It'll impact the budget, so. We have 2,
Yeah, we are replacing 2 vehicles, but
so we'd need to get
Mhm.
another.
where am I? So again, on capital outlay, the next item that I had for y'all was to, again, purchase 2 police cars. Since I've been here, you know, my approach is that we've got 10 vehicles, that every year if we buy 2, that no vehicle is more than 5 years old, because at that point, they're starting to break down. They're going to be maintenance issues. And what I've always told the officers was, if they ever have to hit the gas or the brakes, I want both to work very well. And so we don't want to really have these ancient vehicles. And so, you know, the idea is if we just do 2 a year, our budget stays flat and the equipment stays good. And it's been working. We also wanted to purchase 2 more of the mobile radar signs that we have on Bayou right now. I got a quote today just to see what would it take to add solar to it. It's not really that much. It's not outside the number that we have budgeted. And that gives us a little bit more flexibility.
So this 7,000 doesn't include the solar?
It's right at 7,200 with the solar type of thing, so it's right there.
And can we buy a solar panel to go on the one that we already have?
My impression on that is the answer is no, that equipment is not suitable for a solar piece.
The one we have?
The current one, it's not solar.
Okay, that's not good.
But that's all with some questions this afternoon that we were trying to get, so.
The
we'll
solar
be
is a
looking
game
into it.
changer. That is a game changer. That will make life a lot easier for everybody involved.
The final capital outlay is purchasing new tasers for the officers. That's using a 36-month lease. I know Aaron and AJ worked very hard trying to look at the option of purchasing outright and, you know, having to repair and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Their recommendation or request to us was to do a 36-month lease. That'd be $72.75 a year for all their tasers. Again, in our interlocal agreement, that the city provides basically all equipment, basically everything to deal with the police except personnel cost. Okay. So you see ammunition, guns, those things, that's all on us. That's it for our police. And I'm gonna try to speed it up a little bit, just given time. Under the building department, we pretty much have already talked about the building department. That budget's $451,000. Again, we talked about adding a building inspector halfway through the year. We can go look at and make some adjustments there. There is a consulting line item with Orion Planning. So once we finish the comprehensive plan, one of the biggest pieces of the next puzzle is rewriting our zoning code to be conducive with the new plan. That's about $75,000 and probably takes 6 to 10 months to implement. Professional fees legal, again, that's for Derek or otherwise, going to planning and zoning meetings and those types of things. And then finally, engineering fees, $40,000, and that's having engineers review the plans that are submitted to the city, such especially subdivisions, commercial projects. Okay. And that summarizes the building department. We were looking for a vehicle in there. I did move one of the older police cars that were, I think it was a Taurus. So we had planned on we replaced a police car, so we still had a car. So I'm gonna bring that back into the building department to have it. I was gonna use that for the development coordinator, but if we talk about having another building inspector, we may need to be talking about another vehicle in that department so they can actually go and do the inspections. Okay.
Well, that worked out well. What was the other 12,000 allocated for? I saw you had Orion Planning, and then there
Where's
was
this?
another firm.
That's in the building department?
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
It's general zoning code.
NR, that's what it was. It was NR Consulting. I wasn't sure what that stood for.
Okay. Does that answer it? Good.
What was it?
I heard NR Consulting.
Yeah, we didn't know what it stood for. We're asking you. I'm sorry. And you can get back with me on that. I didn't,
Which one?
right.
Is it under administration?
75 for zone code and then 10,000 general.
No, it was the one with the consulting with Orion Planning 12.
That is it, zone code rewrite.
NR Consulting, what is that?
See,
What page is that,
Oh.
Catherine?
NG.
Oh, point 13, that's not in the building.
No, that's administration.
That would be administration budget.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's probably the.
Yeah, I know.
two,
So that goes back to public relations and Main Street. Under, what number is that one?
601, so it's on page 12. Right here, Mike, page 12 at the bottom. That's-
So I've got somebody I've talked to about trying to help us with the Main Street Association, so under economic development, that's gonna be in there. So the idea of having someone who's can basically do our PR and public relations, but also assist us with Main Street.
Okay, good deal. We got to get that steering committee going as well. Okay,
Yeah.
that cleared that up.
Sorry, I scooted past it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Public Works, which is our largest department, and obviously we do most streets and drainage. So you see a lot more there. In this budget, we didn't have, obviously, any staffing changes, but we wanted to fill the 2 positions. I know there's been communication already today about trying to maybe add a couple of staff there. And we can look into that and see, how the budget works out for that. The other piece that we've been working on, Kathy has been with Stanley, is looking at a salary range for that department, so that, the years of experience and based on, the services or the skill set that they bring to the table, it would give the manager a capacity to say, all right, well, this one starts at $15 an hour, but somebody who just walks in green will be at $12 an hour. And then they can kind of see their salary increasing, basically on a 2% raise each year if they just stay where they're at. But hopefully we try and get them some skills. And again, going back to kind of what Alan was talking about, when you're talking about heavy equipment operators, well, where can we be if we talk to somebody who can use a dozer and do different stuff. Okay. Engineering services, again, that's a big line item for $130,000. That includes basically $60,000 for street paving, which would be our Phase 4 project, as well as getting into just general drainage. So having some capacity in the general fund for additional drainage, in addition to what we're talking about with the $4.5 million from these other projects. That would be segmented out into a special fund, okay? But there will be something that pops up that somebody says, we need an engineer on that. So that's kind of gives us some capacity to pull that trigger if we need it. Street lights, I wanted to highlight. The street lights to Coast Electric, we pay $193,000 a year. So when a request comes in for a new street light, somebody says, hey, I'd like a street light on my street, and there's already like 6. I'm the guy who drives around and looks at that at night and says yes or no. And often it's, trying to decide, generally you want to definitely see it on curves or at an intersection where there's a stop sign. But sometimes people just say, hey, I want an extra street light. And that costs $14.50 per light every month going forward. So we don't say yes to every one. Tammy does a good job on that, but it's obviously a big ticket item.
We probably need to turn on the GIS layer for streetlights, print out a map, and make sure that they're all a different color on the map. And then you've got a visual on how much they can illuminate, and you should know at that point where we need them. We even need to let Coast Electric look at that, because they are better.
Well, we get the GIS layer from Coast Electric.
Yeah, so they would probably have a better feel for where we need them and where we may not. I know back the first elected term went around actually and
drove around,
turned some off, and
Mike,
Yeah.
we need to get,
exactly. That's what I did in my yard, because the street was, that's a very good point. Thank you. They can that as well.
Mike, I know we only got about a minute or so left, but we need an estimated cost increase for, let's say, the Elliott Home subdivision, that 200 homes or so. They're predicting however much it is coming in.
Yeah, whenever that,
especially with
building it in phases, but the answer would be yes.
Because if you're talking about, what would your guesstimate be? 50 lights?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I don't know.
I'm sure
And
it's
then
in
you
the
times
plans.
about 1450, whatever that is, and then that adds to it. So we need to.
But like the Beauview Phase 2, we just switched those over from the developer to the city since we've accepted that road.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think you're right. That'll be done in phases. They're obviously getting close to finishing kind of their first phase of Deer Crossing. But as they get to do the rest of it, you're going to see an increase as they turn those lights over to us.
And we'll see an increase in real property taxes
And you'll
as
see
well.
an increase in property taxes
Yes.
to offset it. I'm going to try to speed up, but I don't want to shut it down too fast. But the Capilama barn, obviously, I'm leaving that in there at $1,000 a month with the POA. That's our current agreement. Got no reason to think that would change. So just kind of keeping that constant. Obviously, we'd love to see that donated to the city from the POA. We'll see how those conversations continue. Equipment rental was $24,000. That is the new hydraulic excavator we've been talking about. That's on a 36-month lease. So basically, right at $2,000 a month. We looked at the idea of purchasing it, which is about $150,000, and putting that over a lease purchase for 5 years, and what the difference is, and paying. The benefit from the lease is a lot of this equipment is highly IT, a lot of computer stuff on it. So under this agreement, they would be the ones servicing that equipment, even the oil changes, to make sure it's in operating condition. But with just the technology on them these days, it's so much different is what I'm being told. So that's in there. Capital outlay for drainage, we put it as $100,000. That would be implementing new drainage projects. That's in addition to, again, the $4.5 million that we were talking about. That's in a separate fund. Equipment purchase was $71,500. Again, that's buying 2 more lawnmowers. I don't know if y'all pay attention, but our lawnmowers run every day.
Every day.
10 hours a day. And so we kind of have that built into our plan. Every year, we kind of want to have a part of the replacement. Same thing with the Gator, and then one truck. Street paving through the general fund was $310,000. That is pooled with the internet sales tax diversion that we get, and that's $240,000. So our phase 4 paving would be at $550,000 for next year. And that kind of covers the public works. Under economic development, that's $128,000. Professional services make up $75,000 of that. Again, general grant writing, $6,000. SMPDD, $6,000. That's basically $75 an hour used as we need it. We can refer to them. Our lobbyist, Trey, who has done an exceptional job, I am recommending that we increase him from $36,000 to $48,000 to pay him $4,000 a month. And that's a flat fee, so he doesn't turn in any receipts for expenditures. That's just a nightmare for bookkeeping. But he has been exceptional, and we have financially been rewarded because of his hard work in Jackson. And so he came in, competed when he first did put in a proposal to the city of Diamondhead. And again, I had proposals at $48,000, $56,000 a year, and more from other firms, and he came in at $36,000 in order to get the job. And I just think it's time to reward him back. In here also, I put $3,000 for the general fee that the Main Street Association for Mississippi charges to go ahead and start that process to be able to kind of open the door to that. And again, that's where you see the consulting fee that was in there. Where am I going? Debt service, $194,000. So we've got our payment on, again, principal payment for City Hall is $84,000. Principal payment on our existing lease purchase that we did last year is $62,000. And then a new lease purchase for a dump truck would be $18,000 a year. The dump truck's about $100,000, so just instead of having a lump sum cash outflow over a piece of equipment that we're going to use for many years, we put that over a 5-year period. Interfund transfers, so this is our local matches, money that we have to obligate for grant money that we are rewarded. And that's a transfer, so we don't get it back. It goes into the fund and it stays there for that purpose. That's $623,000. The American Rescue Plan is $100,000 for next year. We also will see a budget amendment this year once that $900,000 comes in, hopefully in the next weeks or months. And that'll give us, again, the council had committed $200,000, so that's $100,000 match. The Gulf Coast Restoration Fund for the $2 million that we had received last year is $400,000. East Aloha Sidewalk match is $123,000. That's Gulf Coast Regional Planning. And that kind of makes up those 3 grants. We do have a budgeted deficit for the general fund, which is $1,231,800. That is basically summed up or made up of number one, the $500,000 going possibly for chapel renovations of this wing, engineers for that, which is $10,000, the match to the American Rescue Plan for $100,000, the match to East Aloha grant for $123,000, the match for Gulf Coast Restoration Fund of $400,000, and then trying to acquire land for drainage, these lots that we call drainage lots at $100,000. So basically, if you add all those up, that's what makes up our deficit compared to just the operations of the city. We're basically using previous years that we've accumulated a bunch of cash, and that's what we've kind of used to go and get some of this grant money. The Mississippi Infrastructure Modification, that's that internet sales. Each year we're seeing that increase, which is kind of by statute, I guess, from the legislature. And that's budgeted at $240,000 is what we expect to receive. And that's all towards street paving. If you get into our grants, our different funds, obviously the Montjoy Creek path was $100,000. That's a separate fund from Gulf Coast Gulf Regional Planning Commission. We've got Tidelands from FY19 and FY20. That's for Montjoy Creek improvements, $572,000. We have Tidelands for FY21 and FY22. That's the Noma Drive waterfront. And those two add up to $800,000. We've got MDA on the East Aloha roadway, which is $180,000. And hopefully we'll see that project, asking for authorization to bid that project next month. The Gulf Coast Restoration Fund for FY20 and FY21, which is our town center infrastructure at $4.2 million. East Aloha sidewalks, $612,000. The American Rescue Plan, which we've kind of commented on, is $4 million. That's $900,000 in the first payment, $900,000 in the second payment, and then $100,000 each from this fiscal year, next fiscal year from our general fund, and finally $2 million that has been agreed upon by the Board of Supervisors to match us towards draining. So that's a total of $4 million. And finally, Go Mesa, we were awarded just under $500,000 for drainage. And again, that's still, we need to add that to the budget. I got confirmation via email today from DMR. They had not sent out letters yet for that, but that's coming. Again, the state legislature has been extremely generous to us. I did see Senator Moran walk in. We've been the beneficiaries in the last couple of years, which is outstanding. Finally, the solid waste funds, $524,000. We do anticipate a 2.5% CPI increase, but there is no recommended rate increase for residents at this time, and that would finish with a small surplus in that account. And that's your budget preliminary.
That's a lot to comprehend. But job well done. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Excellent job. This is a lot. So our next meeting for the budget will be,
So the council will need to decide, we put in our calendar having a recess meeting next Tuesday, the 13th. If y'all feel we need that, or having another recess meeting just an hour before your regularly scheduled meeting on
the 20th.
July 20th. Now, we'll tell you, some of the items that y'all have asked for, we're going to need to go and use our adding machine a little bit. We start talking about adding personnel, adding vehicles. Those are big ticket items. And so that trickles down to that bottom line. So we need to start moving things around a little bit and trying to keep us in a good position.
I feel we need to come on the 13th, my personal opinion. Any thoughts?
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
So we'll recess. Y'all go with coming back on the 13th? So we'll recess till 6 then on the 13th.
So just when we end y'all next meeting, the regular scheduled meeting, just remember we need to recess that accordingly.
We need to recess this meeting to the 13th. That's the 20th. Oh, at the end of the next, yes, but tonight we do it. We have 2 meetings tonight, so everybody's, shh. Well, thank you. Excellent. Okay. So can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move.
Motion made by Councilman Moran. Can I get a second? Second